Hello, my name is John Harrison. I'm your instructor for this class, Intercultural Communication and Conversation. Now, as we start the semester, no, all of March we're doing online classes, and I found it much easier to have the asynchronous classes, as in I produce a video lecture and you respond to it. Having discussion classes all together on Zoom is not a fun time, but so the first month will be online, and then after that, hopefully, unless there's some great disaster, we'll be in person doing things again. And that's very exciting. But let's get started with the introduction and explanation of what this class is. Now, all my classes are on Tuesday this semester, which is, great and convenient, but it makes it, a long day. But so in this class, Intercultural Communication and Conversation, you will be going over different methods and ways of talking and presenting and conversing, and also reviewing, discussing cultural communication points and dealing with intercultural communication. Now, since here at the university, all of you are primary school education majors, effectively, in that all of you want to be elementary school teachers, this class, everything in it, is going to be centered around teaching. Or not, if not centered, it's going to be relatable to teaching. Everything, well, I'll say everything, most everything is going to be something that you can take with you into the classroom. Something that will be in your head, in your tool belt, in your toolbox of knowledge. You can use it, whether it's in presenting and teaching a class, or in dealing with students, or multicultural students, or international students, as it may be. All those things. I think it's very important that this class be relatable to your future careers. Now, about me. My name is John Harrison. This is actually, I realize, this is my 4th year at this university, but 2 of those years, and the start of this one, have been online. I've only had 1 year actually on campus, and I miss it a lot. Anyways, I lived in Xinjiang before, and I lived in Kowloon province for about 10 years, and but now I live in Hanam City in Gyeonggi-do. So when it's time for on campus, I'll be coming up from Hanam. I'll be driving up, and I won't be on campus unless the rest of the week, unless something really needs to be. So if you need to contact me, eClass is the best way. There's a messaging service on eClass, or if you have a question, and we'll talk about it later as well, using the Q&A function on eClass is very, very helpful. Some students have already started asking questions, clarifying things. It's a very nice, it's a great service, really. Anyways, you can send me an email. Email is great too. My email is mentioned in the syllabus. It's also on eClass. I have a university email address. And also, you can text me, but I don't like getting. I don't appreciate getting texts, but you can. But make sure when you send a message, you put your name and what class you're in, because I teach about. I teach several classes. I teach about what would it be? A little less than 100 students this semester, and I'm going to try to learn your names, but some of you might have the same name, and that's happened before as well, where students with the same name but are in different classes. So please make sure to write down your name and what class you're in, and then ask your question or your request, as it may be, and then I'll be able to help you with that. I am on Kakao Talk, but please don't send me messages on Kakao Talk. For me, Kakao is personal fun time. Texting and email, that's work. So I like to keep things separate and organized, so it's easier to keep track of things. Kakao can be, cumbersome to handle, and also, as you no doubt know, people can change their display names on Kakao, which is that's fun, that's great. But if you write, smiley face monkey emojis as your name, I don't know who you are. So email or e-class is great because those you have your names there already. Now let's get into a deeper explanation of the grading and attendance policy and all those things. Now we're going to follow the basic university attendance policy. So make sure you come to class, and if you have an excused absence, as in a reason for it, what we call an official reason, make sure that you go through the university administration process to get that approval, and then I can give you an excused absence. If you just tell me, I can't give you an excused absence. I need the documentation that says it's an excused absence. So please make sure of that. But let's get into the overall explanation of grading and fun things like that. With that, let's take a look and answer a few questions about how to ask questions. If you have questions for me outside of class, especially during this first month where we're online, please first check on the Q&A section on eClass. That's the best way, because unless you have a very unique personal question, about grading or something like that, of course, send me a message. But if you have a clarification question, then it's good for you to ask on Q&A section on eClass. That way, everyone in the class can see your question. Now, you don't need to have your name posted. It could be anonymous. That's okay. But it's great because everyone can see your question and everyone can see my answer. Because if you're unclear about something, about an assignment, or about when something's due, that pretty much guarantees that 5 other students are also confused on what's going on. So it's very good that instead of me answering 5 individual messages, that I can answer one question, and everyone can benefit from the information. If you do email or text me, please make sure that you include your name in the message so I know who you are, and which class, what your major is, so I can better answer your questions. Also, don't expect immediate responses. I'm busy, I have a life, I have a family, and I don't expect immediate responses from you either. But if you send me a message by email or text, you can expect a response by the end of the following day. So, yes, I don't expect you to answer my questions in the middle of the night, and I neither should you. It's all right. With that, let's take a look at the requirements, and we'll get over the gradings here. Now, this class, it's an English conversational class, but everything in this class will have elements and parts that you'll be able to take into your future careers as elementary school teachers. So, it is important. You'll be expected to attend each class and participate in all activities, all classroom activities, all discussions. That's very important. This first month, we're online, so we're going to have to rejigger things a little bit. But when we're in class, we need to participate. Having a positive attitude, even if you have a negative attitude, like myself, if your disposition is just a bit more negative, you need to fake being positive. Have interest, take interest, make interest, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's quite important as well. Excellent, good. Now, how grading will work. Before COVID, we had a strong curve, a grading curve, in that 20% of students in any class, could get an A, and 20% of the class had to get a C. So, but since COVID, we've been allowed to grade on an absolute scale. So you earn the grade you earn, and that's it. So as things can change this semester, I'll keep you informed as I become informed about what's going on in terms of grading. But absolute is nice because you get the grade you get, but we might go back to the old system. I don't know yet. For grading breakdown on how things are going to work, I'm going to be using a progressive mindset and scale. That means you'll get points for everything you do throughout the semester. Right now, on day 1 of the class, you have 0 points. And as you attend classes, as you answer questions, as you participate, as you complete projects and tests and everything, you'll earn more and more points. it's similar to, you might think, as a role-playing game, an RPG, or any game nowadays, really. You earn XP by doing things, by playing the game. The more XP you get, you're higher the level. And it's just like that. And just something that I think we'll need to harp upon a bit. The baseline, the average score, if you do an okay job, that's 75%. Okay is 75%. That's what it'll get you. If you want to get a B, if you want to get 80% or 90% or 99%, you have to do better. You have to be better. You can't work as hard as anyone else. You have to work harder than anyone else. So let's take a look at the grading categories. First, attendance is important. Attendance is your presence in the classroom or online, physically and mentally, and you're ready for class. Be careful of the time and when you come to class. When we're in-person classes, when we have the in-person classes, you'll note that class starts 10 minutes after the hour. So make sure that you're ready. Now, for the online classes, the video lectures, the lessons will be open for one day. They'll be open on Tuesday. That's when we all have our classes. So you'll have Tuesday to watch the material. That's when you need to get taken care of. Now, since this is a 2-credit class, for the online lectures, there has to be 50 minutes of lecture material. So if you have 50 minutes and you start watching the lecture at 11:30 p.m. on Tuesday, you're not going to finish in time. So please be aware, give yourself time to make sure that you can watch and view the lessons before the closing of the window. So I'm going to open it at 12:01 a.m. on Tuesday, and they'll close at 11:59 p.m. on Tuesday. You have effectively 24 hours to view 50 minutes. And since it's on our official schedule, you definitely should make the time for it. Should not be a problem. Next, participation and assignments. Now, we'll be online, so the online section will have video, individual assignments most definitely. But once we get into in-person classes, if all goes well with the blessing, we will have group or partner activities and projects and assignments, and it'll be a great time. So make sure that you participate. If you don't participate, you won't get points for that. You can't get points just for existing. You'll get points for doing things, for participating, for asking questions, for being an active member. There are going to be tests. The tests are very helpful for making sure that we understand what's going on. The 2 tests, they'll be on eClass. They won't be particularly difficult because all the material will be in the textbook and in the class lectures. There'll be multiple choice questions, short essay questions, nothing too stressful or difficult. And by necessity, they are open book as well. So the answers will be staring you in the face. But there are tests just to help us with grading and to provide a firm objective to make sure that we do have some understanding. Again, this is an intercultural communication conversation class, but since all of you students are, you are on a single track to become elementary school teachers, this is not a regular conversation class that you will find in a general university. Everything in this class will relate in the future of your career. You'll learn activities, its methods, and styles that you can use in your teaching, and you'll be able to apply and translate them from English into Korean presentation skills, all those wonderful things. So it is important to have an idea on. We do have big projects as well. Now these projects be online and in person, and you'll have your first project coming up, today, as it is. And so some will have group-based or individual, and that really depends on how things are going. But the projects won't be too difficult, but they will exercise your communication muscles. And that's where the fun comes in. Now, let's talk about your first project and what that is, what your first project's going to be. Now, your first project, it's a small one, it's just a small one, is a video introduction. You're going to record a video and introduce yourself. That's it. That's all you have to do. There is a time limit, but there's no minimum of time. So your video cannot be more than 3 minutes long. That's for my purposes for grading. If for evaluation purposes, if everyone, let's say there's 90 students, and everyone makes a 10-minute video, that's a lot of time. That's a lot of watching. So 3 minutes or less. Now, there are some questions you're going to need to answer. You'll need to introduce yourself, who you are, and 4 points of introduction, 4 things about you. And you'll need to answer the questions, why you want to be a teacher and why you should be a teacher. See, it was a little tricky there. Now, there are other conditions that are there for grading, and we'll get into deeper explanations soon. I've prepared short examples of each level of grading to give you an idea of what you can expect, what levels of effort will get you what points. I'll mention it again. I can't remember if I mentioned it before, but you do need to show your face and your lips to show your face. So make sure that you're in a place where you can record safely and securely, and a place that you can be heard. But let's get into that introduction about the video and the explanation about the video introduction project now. Let's take a look at some different examples of what you can expect in terms of grading. This is our first project, and it's a small project, but it's still, I want you to see, basically the differences in effort that will result in different levels of grades. So first, I want to give you an example of 0 points. You can imagine it has to be really bad if it's 0 points. But first, let's see the first example of what will get you 0. That's right. 0 will get you 0. If you don't give anything, if you don't turn in your assignment, you don't do your project, you will get 0 points. That's all it is. So nothing gets you nothing, really. I think that's really obvious, but it's always nice to make sure. Well, then let's take a look then at an example of will be a 1 point thing, what it would look like.
Hello. I want to be a teacher because I like children. I like video games, and I like coffee. Bye.
Right, there you see an example. The sound quality isn't very good. Also, you couldn't see my face, my eyes, or my mouth. Both were covered. You need to show your face. Help. This is it is an introduction video. That's part of it. Couldn't hear me very well, and I didn't answer the questions, and I didn't partially answer, but it was not good at all. And the angle for filming was quite bad, as in the ceiling light, which I'm sure you have something similar in your homes. Yeah, it's a very bad angle. So that's an example. Let's take a look at the level 2.
Hello, my name is John Harrison. I live in Hanam, and I like pizza, and I like cookies and watching TV. I want to be a teacher because it's a good job, and I like students. Bye.
It's a little bit better, but not much. You can see my face there, but you can also see in my delivery, it's very low energy. It looks like I just woke up, and nothing informational is actually given there. So it's better. It's not good, but it's better. And that counts for something, really. But you can see how partial answers affected also the, I look disheveled in it as well. Let's take a look at the next level.
Hi, my name's John Harrison, and I live in Hanam City in Gyeonggi-do, and I really enjoy cycling and hiking and like traveling, watching movies with my wife and baby daughter. I want to be a teacher because I enjoy working with children and helping nurturing them, and I should become a teacher because I have a lot to give to society. Bye.
There it is, level 3. That's a standard level. Now, the answers are a bit better. I showered and shaved, wearing clean clothes. Overall, it's just much. It looks better. It doesn't sound as good as it could. I'm using that's using the camera's microphone, and it's not very good. But that is an example of what an okay video is, and there's no editing to that either, but it is something. So you can see what a C level it's video would look like. Well, then let's keep it going and take a look at the next videos and see. I don't think that requires too much explanation, but it's helpful to see the different examples of the different levels of effort.
All right, recording 3, 2, 1. Hello, my name is John Harrison. I'm 38 years old and I live in Hanam City in Gyeonggi-do Province. I enjoy cycling and I've cycled all around Korea. It's really one of the things I love. I also enjoy hiking and just traveling in general. I'm married and I have one daughter, and she's really the most precious thing in the world to me. And so I'm very invested in the future of Korean education. It's very important that my daughter receives a good education from good teachers. So I think I should be a teacher because, one, I care a lot, and I really enjoy nurturing and working with children and making them realize their potential and see what they're capable of, and showing them a whole range of experiences. I should become a teacher because I have a lot to offer to the children and students of Korea. This has been my introduction. I hope you have a lovely day, and see you in next class. Goodbye.
And there it is, a little bit better answers. Still no editing, but you can see the lighting is, it's a bit more thought put into it. And finally, let's take a look at, what the S rank would look like. And basically, it has editing. That's the key, the secret ingredient. Let's take a look. Hello, my name is John Harrison. I'm 38 years old and I live in Hanam City in Gyeonggi-do Province. I enjoy cycling and I've cycled all around Korea. It's really one of the things I love. I also enjoy hiking and just traveling in general. I'm married and I have one daughter, and she's really the most precious thing in the world to me. And so I'm very invested in the future of Korean education. It's very important that my daughter receives a good education from good teachers. So I think I should be a teacher because, one, I care a lot, and I really enjoy nurturing and working with children and making them realize their potential and see what they're capable of, and showing them a whole range of experiences. I should become a teacher because I have a lot to offer to the children and students of Korea. This has been my introduction. I hope you have a lovely day, and see you in next class. Goodbye. All right, there you see it. Really, that's a big difference. Just putting a little more effort into it, and because I put auto captions on, you can't really see the differences because the captions are in there. But yes, some of you are able to put subtitles and captions, and those are very, very nice to have to make things more understandable. I hope this has been helpful. These are just examples. Please, for all love, do not copy me, but because you need to tell your own stories. I think you probably noticed, even though I said, there's a time limit, as in don't go over 3 minutes, but the longest any of these videos, these examples that I provided, they're a minute 15 or a minute 20 seconds long. They're not long at all. So please don't go crazy trying to make something longer. Shorter and good is better than long and bad. So let's try to keep that in mind for this project. All right, let's get back into the main lecture. Next, let's talk about there is no perfect Pepsi, only perfect Pepsis. And this relates to the theme of this class. There is no perfect English, only perfect Englishes. And we're going to watch a talk. It's one of the, I would dare say, one of the original TED Talks. Not really original TED Talk, but it's from 2007. It's an old one, almost as old as you. You're quite young, so it happens. Now, in it, the presenter tells about this food statistician who discovered something about choice and happiness, and how there's no one-size-fits-all answer to things. So, and that's true for language, or in particular in English. Nobody owns the English language. And what I mean by that, think about the Korean language. Who owns that? Well, the answer is Koreans. Koreans own that. Nowadays, and there's an official government agency that is there for the education and continuation and evaluation of the Korean language. And there's another agency in North Korea, and there's differences between the two. But they have agencies of that, as in there's ownership of it. People in France don't have their own version of Korean. And if they do, it's wrong, because Koreans own the Korean language. But who owns the English language? Now, you might think, well, people in England own it. No. They don't own it, because they spread it around the world. That's why I speak it. And so they lost ownership because they spread it around too much. It became diluted. So there is no perfect English anymore. There's no one correct English or one or incorrect English. There are different versions of that. There's different grammars. There's different pronunciations. There's different vocabulary as well, which we'll get into later. And most probably, you've been taught generally North American English. And what that means is United States English. In Canadian English is very similar in pronunciation to American English, but spelling is British style English. So it's a mix of the two. So this TED Talk, while they're talking about food, it relates to a lot of things. And I want you to think about how it relates to education. And in particular, if you can, think about English education. Because the main lessons that the speaker talks about, the main takeaway points, are applicable to education as well. About how there's no one correct method or no one correct answer for everyone. Everyone has their own way of doing things. And we'll get into that now.
I think I was supposed to talk about my new book, which is called Blink, and it's about snap judgments and first impressions. And it comes out in January, and I hope you all buy it in triplicate. But I was thinking about this, and I realized that that although my new book makes me happy, and I think will make my mother happy, it's not really about happiness. So I decided instead I would talk about someone who I think has done as much to make Americans happy as perhaps anyone over the last 20 years. A man who is a great personal hero of mine, someone by the name of Howard Moskowitz, who is most famous for reinventing spaghetti sauce. Howard's about this high, and he's round, and he's in his 60s, and he has big, huge glasses and thinning gray hair, and he has a kind of wonderful exuberance and vitality, and he has a parrot, and he loves the opera, and he's a great aficionado of medieval history. And he, by profession, he's a psychophysicist. Now, I should tell you that I have no idea what psychophysics is. Although at some point in my life, I dated a girl for 2 years who was getting her doctorate in psychophysics, which should tell you something about that relationship. But Howard, as far as I know, psychophysics is about measuring things. And Howard is very interested in measuring things. And he graduated with his doctorate from Harvard, and he set up a little consulting shop in White Plains, New York. And one of his first clients was, this is many years ago, back in the early 70s, one of his first clients was Pepsi. And Pepsi came to Howard and they said, you know, there's this new thing called aspartame, and we would like to make Diet Pepsi. And we'd like you to figure out how much aspartame we should put in each can of Diet Pepsi in order to have the perfect drink. Right? Now that sounds like an incredibly straightforward question to answer. And that's what Howard thought. Because Pepsi told him, look, we're working with a band between 8 and 12%. Anything below 8% sweetness is not sweet enough. Anything above 12% sweetness is too sweet. We want to know what's the sweet spot between 8 and 12. Now, if I gave you this problem to do, you would all say, it's very simple. What we do is you make up a big experimental batch of Pepsi at every degree of sweetness, 8%, 8.1, 8.2, 8.3, all the way up to 12. And we try this out with thousands of people, and we plot the results on a curve, and we take the most popular concentration, right? Really simple. Howard does the experiment, and he gets the data back, and he plots it on a curve, and all of a sudden he realizes it's not a nice bell curve. In fact, the data doesn't make any sense. It's a mess. It's all over the place, right? Now, most people in that business, in the world of testing food and such, are not dismayed when the data comes back a mess. They think, well, you know, figuring out what people think about cola is not that easy. You know, maybe we made an error somewhere along the way. You know, let's just make an educated guess, and they simply point and they go for 10%, right in the middle. Howard is not so easily placated. Howard is a man of a certain degree of intellectual standards, and this was not good enough for him. And this question bedeviled him for years. And he would think it through and say, what was wrong? Why could we not make sense of this experiment with Diet Pepsi? And one day he was sitting in a diner in White Plains about to go, trying to dream up some work for Nescafe. And suddenly, like a bolt of lightning, the answer came to him. And that is that when they analyzed the Diet Pepsi data, they were asking the wrong question. They were looking for the perfect Pepsi, and they should have been looking for the perfect Pepsis. Trust me, this was an enormous revelation. This was one of the most brilliant breakthroughs in all of food science. And Howard immediately went on the road, and he would go to conferences around the country, and he would stand up and he would say, you have been looking for the perfect Pepsi. You're wrong. You should be looking for the perfect Pepsis. And people would look at him with a blank look, and they would say, what are you talking about? It's craziness. And they would say, you know, move, next. Try to get business, nobody would hire him. He was obsessed, though, and he talked about it and talked about it and talked about it. Howard loves the Yiddish expression, to a worm in horseradish, the world is horseradish. This was his horseradish. He was obsessed with it. And finally, he had a breakthrough. Vlasic pickles came to him. And they said, Mr. Moskowitz, Dr. Moskowitz, we want to make the perfect pickle. And he said, there is no perfect pickle. There are only perfect pickles. And he came back to them and he said, you don't just need to improve your regular. You need to create zesty. And that's where we got zesty pickles. Then the next person came to him, and that was Campbell's soup. And this was even more important. In fact, Campbell's soup is where Howard made his reputation. Campbell's made Prego. And Prego in the early 80s was struggling next to ragu, which was the dominant spaghetti sauce of the 70s and 80s. Now, in the industry, I don't know whether you care about this or how much time I have to go into this, but it was, technically speaking, this is an aside, Prego is a better tomato sauce than ragu. The quality of the tomato paste is much better. The spice mix is far superior. It adheres to the pasta in a much more pleasing way. In fact, they would do the famous bowl test back in the 70s with ragu and Prego. You'd have a plate of spaghetti, and you would pour it on, right? And the ragu would all go to the bottom, and the Prego would sit on top. That's called adherence. And anyway, despite the fact that they were far superior in adherence and the quality of their tomato paste, Prego was struggling. So they came to Howard and they said, fix us. And Howard looked at their product line and he said, what you have is a dead tomatoes society. So he said, this is what I want to do. And he got together with the Campbell's Soup Kitchen and he made 45 varieties of spaghetti sauce. And he varied them according to every conceivable way that you can vary tomato sauce. By sweetness, by level of garlic, by tartness, by sourness, by tomatoiness, by visible solids, my favorite term in the spaghetti sauce business. Every conceivable way you can vary spaghetti sauce, he varied spaghetti sauce. And then he took this whole raft of 45 spaghetti sauces and he went on the road. He went to New York, he went to Chicago, he went to Jacksonville, he went to Los Angeles. And he brought in people by the truckload into big halls. And he sat them down for 2 hours and he gave them over the course of that 2 hours 10 bowls. 10 small bowls of pasta with a different spaghetti sauce on each one. And after they ate each bowl, they had to rate from 0 to 100 how good they thought the spaghetti sauce was. And at the end of that process, after doing it for months and months, he had a mountain of data about how the American people feel about spaghetti sauce. And then he analyzed the data. Now, did he look for the most popular brand variety of spaghetti sauce? No. Howard doesn't believe that there is such a thing. Instead, he looked at the data and he said, let's see if we can group all these different data points into clusters. Let's see if they congregate around certain ideas. And sure enough, if you sit down and you analyze all this data on spaghetti sauce, you realize that all Americans fall into one of three groups. There are people who like their spaghetti sauce plain. There are people who like their spaghetti sauce spicy. And there are people who like it extra chunky. And of those three facts, the third one was the most significant. Because at the time, in the early 1980s, if you went to a supermarket, you would not find extra chunky spaghetti sauce. And Prego turned to Howard and they said, are you telling me that 1/3 of Americans crave extra chunky spaghetti sauce and yet no one is servicing their needs? And he said yes. And Prego then went back and completely reformulated their spaghetti sauce and came out with a line of extra chunky that immediately and completely took over the spaghetti sauce business in this country. And over the next 10 years, they made $600 million off their line of extra chunky sauces. And everyone else in the industry looked at what Howard had done and they said, oh my God, we've been thinking all wrong. And that's when you started to get 7 different kinds of vinegar and 14 different kinds of mustard and 71 different kinds of olive oil and then eventually even ragu hired Howard. And Howard did the exact same thing for ragu that he did for Prego. And today, if you go to the supermarket, a really good one, and you look at how many ragus there are, do you know how many they are? 36. In 6 varieties. Cheese, light, robusto, rich and hearty, old world traditional, extra chunky garden. That's Howard's doing. That is Howard's gift to the American people. Now, why is that important? It is, in fact, enormously important. I'll explain to you why. Because what Howard did is he fundamentally changed the way the food industry thinks about making you happy. Assumption number 1 in the food industry used to be that the way to find out what people want to eat, what will make people happy, is to ask them. And for years and years and years and years, Ragu and Prego would have focus groups. And they would sit all you people down and they would say, what do you want in a spaghetti sauce? Tell us what you want in a spaghetti sauce. And for all those years, 20, 30 years, through all those focus group sessions, no one ever said they wanted extra chunky, even though at least 1/3 of them deep in their hearts actually did. People don't know what they want, right? As Howard loves to say, the mind knows not what the tongue wants. It's a mystery. And a critically important step in understanding our own desires and tastes is to realize that we cannot always explain what we want deep down. If I asked all of you, for example, in this room, what you want in a coffee, you know what you'd say? Every one of you would say, I want a dark, rich, hearty roast. So people always say when you ask them what they want in a coffee, what do you like? Dark, rich, hearty roast. What percentage of you actually like a dark, rich, hearty roast? According to Howard, somewhere between 25 and 27% of you. Most of you like milky, weak coffee. But you will never, ever say to someone who asks you what you want that I want a milky, weak coffee. So that's number 1 thing that Howard did. Number 2 thing that Howard did is he made us realize, it's another very critical point, he made us realize in the importance of what he likes to call horizontal segmentation. Why is this critical? It's critical because this is the way the food industry thought before Howard. Right? What were they obsessed with in the early 80s? They were obsessed with mustard. In particular, they were obsessed with the story of Grey Poupon. Right? Used to be, there were two mustards, French's and Golden's. What were they? Yellow mustard. What's in yellow mustard? Yellow mustard seeds, turmeric, and paprika. That was mustard. Grey Poupon came along with a Dijon, right? Much more volatile brown mustard seed, some white wine, a nose hit, much more delicate aromatics. And what did they do? They put it in a little tiny glass jar with a wonderful enameled label on it. They made it look French, even though it's made in Oxnard, California. And instead of charging $1.50 for the 8-ounce can, the way the 8-ounce bottle, the way that French's and Golden's did, they decided to charge $4. And then they had those ads, right, with the guy in the Rolls Royce, and he's eating the Grey Poupon, and the other Rolls Royce pulls up, and he says, do you have any Grey Poupon? And the whole thing, after they did that, Grey Poupon takes off, takes over the mustard business. And everyone's take-home lesson from that was that the way to get to make people happy, right, is to give them something that is more expensive, something to aspire to, right? Is to make them turn their back on what they like, think they like now, and reach out for something higher up the mustard hierarchy. A better mustard, a more expensive mustard, a mustard of more sophistication and culture and meaning. And Howard looked at that and said, that's wrong. Mustard does not exist on a hierarchy. Mustard exists, just like tomato sauce, on a horizontal plane. There is no good mustard or bad mustard. There is no perfect mustard or imperfect mustard. There are only different kinds of mustards that suit different kinds of people. He fundamentally democratized the way we think about taste. And for that as well, we owe Howard Moskowitz a huge vote of thanks. Third thing that Howard did, and perhaps the most important, is Howard confronted the notion of the Platonic dish. What do I mean by that? For the longest time in the food industry, there was a sense that there was one way, a perfect way, to make a dish. You go to Chez Panisse, they give you the red tail sashimi with roasted pumpkin seeds in a something reduction. They don't give you 5 options on the reduction, right? They don't say, do you want the extra chunky reduction or do you want the... No, you just get the reduction. Why? Because the chef at Chez Panisse has a Platonic notion about red tail sashimi. This is the way it ought to be. And when that, and she serves it that way time and time again, and if you quarrel with her, she will say, you know what? You're wrong. This is the best way it ought to be in this restaurant. Now, that same idea fueled the commercial food industry as well. They had a notion, a Platonic notion of what tomato sauce was. And where did that come from? It came from Italy. Italian tomato sauce is what? It's blended, it's thin. The culture of tomato sauce was thin. When we talked about authentic tomato sauce in the 1970s, we talked about Italian tomato sauce. We talked about the earliest ragouts, which had no visible solids, right? Which were thin, you just put a little bit over and it sunk down to the bottom of the pasta. That's what it was. And why were we attached to that? Because we thought that what it took to make people happy was to provide them with the most culturally authentic tomato sauce, A, B. And B, we thought that if we gave them the culturally authentic tomato sauce, then they would embrace it. And that's what would please the maximum number of people. And the reason we thought that, in other words, people in the cooking world were looking for cooking universals. They were looking for one way to treat all of us. And there's good reason for them to be obsessed with the idea of universals, because all of science, through the 19th century and much of the 20th, was obsessed with universals. Psychologists, medical scientists, economists were all interested in finding out the rules that govern the way all of us behave. But that changed, right? What is the great revolution in science of the last 10, 15 years? It is the movement from the search for universals to the understanding of variability. Now in medical science, we don't want to know just how cancer works. We want to know how your cancer is different from my cancer. I guess my cancer is different from your cancer. We're interested in, genetics has opened the door to the study of human variability. What Howard Moskowitz was doing was saying, this same revolution needs to happen in the world of tomato sauce. And for that, we owe him a great vote of thanks. I'll give you one last illustration of variability. And that is, Howard not only believed that, but he took it a second step, which was to say that when we pursue universal principles in food, we aren't just making an error, we are actually doing ourselves a massive disservice. And the example he used was coffee. And coffee is something he did a lot of work with Nescafe. If I were to ask all of you to try and come up with a brand of coffee, a type of coffee, a brew, that made all of you happy, and then I asked you to rate that coffee, the average score in this room for coffee would be about 60 on a scale of 0 to 100. If, however, you allowed me to break you into coffee clusters, maybe 3 or 4 coffee clusters, and I could make coffee just for one of those, for each of those individual clusters, your scores would go from 60 to 75 or 78. The difference between coffee at 60 and coffee at 78 is the difference between coffee that makes you wince and coffee that makes you deliriously happy. That is the final and I think most beautiful lesson of Howard Moskowitz, that in embracing the diversity of human beings, we will find a sure way to true happiness. Thank you.
There we have it. There's the talk by Malcolm Gladwell. He's a very famous author and researcher in his own right, talking about another very famous researcher, Howard Moskowitz, and talking about food and happiness and really ways of going about it. But there are 3 main lessons there that were quite important for our purposes, and the speaker mentioned them. Now, for our task, for our a bit of homework, really, yes. You're going to go on to eClass, go on to the discussion. Under the discussion tab, there'll be week 1 questions, and you'll need to answer those questions. This is also a way to make sure that you are watching the videos and paying attention. I know these videos can be a little long, and it can be difficult to follow along. And this is a way to make sure that students aren't just playing the videos on mute with the sound off, things like that. So it's a nice way. It's also a good comprehension check because I can't see you and see how you're reacting to the material. I don't know what you're getting and what you're not getting. And so this is a very good way of seeing how much is being comprehended. And so there are 3 lessons that the speaker said that Howard had discovered with his work in Pepsi and spaghetti sauce and coffee, the food research. I'd like you to choose one of those 3 lessons, the one you think is the most important. So choose one of those 3 lessons and explain why you think it's the most important of those 3 and how it relates to education. And that when I say education, I mean in the context of Korean education. I don't know for certain, but I'm pretty sure that all of you spent almost all your entire time in Korean schools. Statistically, that's probable. Some of you might have studied abroad, but maybe 1 or 2 of you out of the 100 for significant amounts of time. So look at the speaker's, what he said with the 3 main lessons were. I'm intentionally not saying them now. I want you to be able to recount them and identify what they were. And identify, this will make sense also in the discussion. It will be written down. So the speaker had 3 main lessons. Choose one of those 3 and identify what it was and why it's the most important lesson and how it relates to education in Korea. Whether it's something that can help solve a problem, or it identifies a problem or issue, or it helps describe a situation in Korean education. I think this is a good opener. Now, this is not a project or an assignment in of itself. This is a short discussion topic, as in I want to see you, show that it's a comprehension check. So when I say identify and describe, no more than 1 paragraph. So no more than, let's say, 200 words. So more than once you'll need to identify what it is, why it's important, and how it relates. So you need at least 3 sentences there, truthfully. But you do not. This is not a long essay. Do not write too much. Do not write too much. This is not a big homework. It's there to just make sure that you're paying attention and thinking. That's all it is. That's all it is. So I urge you. I'm going to emphasize this point and point again. This is just comprehension check and attendance, effectively, not a natural project. Your video project, that's a natural project. That's the end of our first week together. I hope it's been not been too stressful. I hope your first week is going well. Now it's actually your second week because of March 1st, a holiday. Our class is starting in the second week. So hopefully everything's going well for you. Hope you're staying safe wherever you are. I'm looking very forward to your answers for the discussions question, and I'm looking forward to your video introductions. So I really enjoy those because right now I'm looking into the lens of a camera, or I'm looking into the screen that shows me. That's not teaching. I don't enjoy this. I enjoy seeing people. I'm old-fashioned that way. Next week we're going to begin improper talking about different parts of it. Now, the first chapter is about icebreakers, but icebreakers are really, really good to do in person. So we're going to rejigger things around, move things around. So with us being online, but make sure that you do download the manuscript. That's the text we're using. Well, I typed it up, so try to use it. And we'll see each other again next week. Thank you and goodbye.